On December 2, 2025, the New York State Comptroller published an audit of Local Law 144, the city's AI hiring statute. City reviewers found one violation among 32 employers. Independent state auditors found 17. Same companies, same period, a 1,600% detection gap. This is not an outlier. It is the architecture failing in public. The gap exists because the entire compliance chain, employer, auditor, regulator, assumes that an AI hiring system can describe its own reasoning. It cannot. A wrapper system does not know why it chose a candidate. It produces the most statistically plausible next token. When Colorado, Illinois, and the European Union demand deterministic proof of non-discrimination, a probabilistic system has no truthful answer to give. That structural incompatibility is the central problem this paper addresses. The Cornell and Consumer Reports study of 391 employers subject to New York City's jurisdiction found that only 18 had published the legally required bias audits. 13 had posted the required transparency notices. Approximately 95% are operating in regulatory delinquency, not because they lack intent, but because their legal counsel has identified a paradox. Any wrapper-based system that publishes an impact ratio will almost certainly surface evidence of disparate impact, handing a statistical smoking gun to plaintiffs' attorneys. The dominant corporate strategy is not compliance. It is null compliance, claiming the tool does not substantially assist a decision, thereby exempting it from the audit requirement. The December audit closes that loophole. Veriprajna's response is a neuro-symbolic architecture, a system that decouples the neural voice from the symbolic brain. The architecture operates in two layers. System 1. A neural network performs pattern recognition on the application, identifying skills, tenure, and domain experience. This layer is probabilistic and fast. System 2. A deterministic symbolic solver enforces constitutional guardrails. Under Illinois HB 3773, the use of zip codes as a proxy for protected classes is prohibited. The symbolic engine carries that prohibition as a hard-coded rule. When the neural layer surfaces a feature that the symbolic engine identifies as a prohibited proxy, the output is blocked, not retried, not softened, blocked, with a deterministic citation identifying which rule was triggered. The second mechanism is property graph indexing. Within frameworks like Llama Index, candidate and employer records are stored as nodes in a directed property graph. When an auditor asks which candidates were screened by a tool using a zip code proxy, the system performs a graph traversal, following directed edges through the data structure, and returns a provably correct answer. Not a statistically likely answer, a provably correct one. The third mechanism is adjacency matrix analysis. The enterprise represents its hiring decision pipeline as a matrix A. Raising a to the power K identifies every path through which a decision was influenced, quantifying the redundancy of the pipeline and surfacing prohibited dependencies. The math replaces the narrative. The adjacency matrix is the audit trail. The empirical record is unambiguous. Of 391 employers, 18 published required audits. The New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection admitted it consulted the city's Office of Technology and Innovation in 0% of its determinations. 75% of calls to the 311 hotline regarding algorithmic discrimination were misrouted and never reached the agency. Those three statistics describe an enforcement system architecturally incapable of detecting noncompliance, even when the employer was visibly noncompliant. The December audit is not the end of that story. It is the beginning of proactive enforcement. The Comptroller has recommended, and the DCWP has agreed, to shift from complaint-driven to research-driven auditing. In the engineering context, the architecture also demonstrates measurable performance gains, from 800 milliseconds on a cloud API to 12 milliseconds on edge-native deployment, turning regulatory defensibility into an operational asset. The compliance trilemma is real. New York City demands intersectional impact ratios by race and sex. Colorado demands proof of a reasonable care risk management program, effective June 30th, 2026. Illinois bans zip code proxies with no exemptions. The EU AI Act requires full data lineage documentation and conformity assessments. A single wrapper-based stack cannot satisfy all four simultaneously, not because the law is ambiguous, but because the architecture is probabilistic. Sovereign infrastructure, private models deployed on client hardware with own model weights, is the only configuration that passes a forensic audit in all four jurisdictions. The era of vibes is over. The era of engineering certainty has begun. We build these systems. The 12-page brief traces the full architecture, the regulatory fracture, the compliance deficit, the neuro-symbolic mechanism, the graph-based audit trail. The decision timeline is now. Read the brief.